the Sustainability Management Master's Program, you are answering one simple question. Do you care about your future generation? If you care about your kids, their grandkids, then you care about sustainability. And a sustainability manager is someone who has the tools to make people understand how they can contribute towards developing a sustainable world. We have both part-time and full-time students. Our curriculum is 30 hours. Instead of thesis, we have a research project course and a seminar course which provides them with the kind of research background they will need to be successful in their job. But at the same time, sustainability is not always everything about environment. It also relates to the business. They will take a sustainable business strategies course. They will take a project management course. Most of these courses are going to be taught by industry people, the people who are doing sustainability on a daily basis as a part of their job. Any organization that has a large number of employees and has a physical infrastructure, they will have to have a sustainability office. If you have the passion to develop and maintain a sustainable world, come to us and we will help you shape your passion into a career which will create an impact.
Appreciate your support. I appreciate you being here.
Oh, I thought that was
You didn't get all the amazing things that Nick said about me.
And we didn't get it captured.
I don't get to hear that enough.
Well, as you can all tell, Jen and I are very old friends. So I think there's no one better to lead this conversation tonight than her. And I'm going to hand it off. I'm going to go get my kids.
Enjoy. Have a good night, Nick. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you for sponsoring
Happy
this
to.
evening.
Bye, all.
Bye.
Thank you. Wonderful. I want to thank Dr. Schaefer for having me in here and Khalid for organizing. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with all of you tonight about something that is really cutting edge policy in New Jersey and something I'm quite excited about. I also want to thank you for the distraction from trying to find any threads of information I can on the election, because I can be a little obsessive on election day. So thank you for the welcome distraction. I want to tell you a little bit about the organization that I have the pleasure of leading. ANJEC is the Association of New Jersey Environmental Commissions, and we are a 56-year-old organization. We are a 501c3 nonprofit, so we don't endorse any candidates for election, running from dog catcher all the way up to president. So I can't give you my advice on who to vote for, but I can tell you that environment is definitely a top priority for me and for our organization as we work with elected officials and we encourage candidates to focus on environmental issues. ANJEC is really about helping local volunteers called environmental commissioners do their work to create healthy communities and protect and restore our natural resources. So we have about 5,000 people who are members of ANJEC who work on a regular basis in their communities, in their municipalities, to advise their local elected officials, their mayors, their council members, their land use board members on all manner of issues. We are their resource agency. So we provide scientific information, technical information. We provide lots of education trainings. We prioritize issues for action and try to drive people to make phone calls, emails, show up at events, to prioritize issues that are concerning to our municipalities. We have a quarterly magazine. We hold education tours. I do a lot of speaking events. We just finished up our annual environmental congress. We hold that every fall. And so that's a day where hundreds of environmental commissioners from across the state come together to talk about issues that are concerning them, from flooding to climate change to open space access, stormwater management, and everything in between. And so I encourage you to check us out at anjec.org. Follow us on social media. We're most active on Facebook and Instagram. We've got a very active YouTube channel as well. And if you have any questions after this, you can email me. I've got my email at the end. And of course, Khalid and Dr. Schaefer could send it to you as well. Where we see commonality of issue among our approximately 300 municipalities that we work with and 5,000 volunteers, We then engage at the statewide level. So that's when I work with the governor's office, the DEP, which is an agency in the executive branch, so the Department of Environmental Protection. I will work with the legislature. And as Nick said, in some cases, we do work with the federal government. And so there's where we're most active at. We're also on Blue Sky these days. We've got what do we call it now? X. But we're not too active on that. So tonight I have the opportunity to talk to you about resilient communities. And this is something that I have been working on. I'm just timing myself here. It's something I've been working on for more than 15 years at this point. So the issue here is that we have a set of regulations that are pending at this point in time, and they're called NJPACT REAL. And the long name for NJPACT REAL is New Jersey Protecting Against Climate Threats, Resilient Environments and Landscapes. So we like to say we're trying to keep it real about climate science. We're trying to protect communities, and we're trying to make a real difference. These are science-based policies. These are novel in that it is the first time that any state in the country is using climate modeling to inform land use development. So this is breaking stuff here. I've had representatives and advocates from New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Massachusetts call me up and say, "You've done what, how?" Because they're interested in this same set of regulations and how they can enact regulations that will save lives and protect property. Right now, these rules are hanging in the balance, which is why the next governor is really important. So these rules had an open public comment period that closed in early September. We are doing everything we can to encourage Governor Murphy to adopt these before he is out the door in January. There is one candidate who has said that if they are elected, they will repeal these rules, and another candidate who has been silent on these rules. They are a little controversial because they will cost some money. They're not going to cost nearly as much money as if we don't take action. So the bottom line is whatever we do is going to cost money. So I want to go into some of the particulars here of what these NJPACT REAL rules are, but I wanted to give you the background story. And I'll tell you just real quick before I switch slides, a little bit of my magic ball story. And I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this tonight and have the time to talk about it, Dr. Schaefer, because I'm often asked to talk about these regulations. I've been working on this for 15 years. So I'm asked to talk about it a lot. And they say, can you talk about this in 10 minutes? And I said, you want me to talk about groundbreaking regulations that are going to protect lives and property for generations to come and are going to incorporate climate modeling into land use decision-making, which nobody has ever done before, in 10 minutes or less? Okay, sure. So it's real hard to get a whole lot of information out in a short period of time.
Exactly.
As it is, I'm still giving you a 30,000 foot level because this is 15 years worth of work and about 1,000 pages of regulation. So I'm still boiling it down, but I appreciate the time to go into it in a little bit more depth. And the magic ball story is, or the crystal ball story is that more than 15 years ago, I was having dinner with some people who work at DEP, and the state of New Jersey had recently adopted what are called flood hazard area protection rules. So it's the idea of where can you build near a floodplain and how can you build near a floodplain? And we had just updated those regulations and we said, look, these are better than what we had, but they're not good enough. And they weren't good enough because they were still using a data set from 1899. So 20 years before women had the right to vote. We're using a data set to tell us where flooding had happened and how much rain New Jersey is receiving from 1899 to 1999. And so we know with climate change that the past is no longer a predictor of the future. So even though the regulations we had adopted back then were better than what we had, we knew that they weren't good enough. And so I call it the crystal ball meeting because I kept saying, how do we look forward? how do we better understand what the impacts of climate change are going to be into the future so that we can build more resilient development and communities now that'll withstand those effects in the future? So that's the crystal ball meeting of how do we do this? How do we see into the future so that we can act in the present in a way that makes the next generation safer? And that's what these regulations do. So these regulations take a data set that is referred to as NOAA Atlas 14. So the National Oceanographic and Atmospheric Administration, Atlas 14 is their data set. And so this data set takes into account the rapidly changing global systems. So we are seeing changes in the prevailing Arctic winds. And if you watch the weather, this coming winter, there's a possibility, because it happens not infrequently now, in about end of January, beginning of February, you start to hear the meteorologists talk about an Arctic blast. And so we get real cold, not for long, for a couple days, and everybody's grumpy about it because we're not used to being that cold here. And this is because those Arctic winds that have stayed up in the Arctic are now falling down and kissing us in the Northeast. So that Arctic system is starting to collapse because we have less ice. It is less cold up there. We're getting more ice melt. The ocean temperature is warming, and those winds are falling down and just kissing us. About late January, maybe mid-January to early February is about when we see that happen. And so this data set, this NOAA Atlas 14, the good folks at Rutgers, the professors there, have been able to take this data and extrapolate it for what the heck is happening in New Jersey. The other global system that we are seeing rapidly change, and we're starting to see some failure, is in the Gulf Stream. And this is a story that you'll hear in July and August. The Gulf Stream is collapsing. The Gulf Stream is failing. And so we get a stagnation. So far, it's picked back up again, and we'll see it move, but it is stagnating, and it's stagnating for longer periods of time. The Gulf Stream is an ocean current that has very significant influences on weather on the east coast of the United States and on Western Europe. And it is changing migratory patterns. So the last few years, the humpback whales have not migrated to the Caribbean. And we have seen increased strike deaths from shipping, big ships, big cargo ships that have come in. And so we see more humpback whale deaths because they are encountering ship strikes. That's because the bunker, or the menhaden, it's the same fish, bunker menhaden, that would normally migrate to the Caribbean, are hanging out off of the New York Bight. So off of the northern New Jersey, New York area. So that's a feeder fish for humpback whales. And so the humpback whales are like, I'm staying here because the water's warm. That's where my food is. I'm not moving. So we are seeing changes. The Gulf Stream also has a major impact on weather and for New Jersey. So the good folks at Rutgers were able to distill this NOAA Atlas 14 data that really captures these changing global patterns and is able to extrapolate moving forward what that looks like given our current rate of greenhouse gas emissions on the globe. So what is that going to look like for New Jersey through the year 2100? And we feel pretty confident about the minimums of that data. I will also say, because we have had climate science data since at least the 1950s. I know some people like to pretend this is new. It is not. So the 1950s, we're pretty sure that the Industrial Revolution was causing climate change. And we've been able to see with more clarity over time what that relationship of greenhouse gas emissions to our ocean temperatures and our air temperatures are doing. So in New Jersey, if you go to the Office of State Climatology, which is out of Rutgers University, it's run by Dr. David Robinson, who is a wonderful researcher. They've got great data. I have not updated this slide since summer, so I've got to go back and update it again. But every time I update it and I pull from Dr. David Robinson's site, we have more red. We don't get blue that has the coldest of anything anymore. It just doesn't happen. We may get 1 or 2 days that are pretty dang cold in January or February, but we're not getting coldest months. We're getting warmest topped by warmer, topped by warmest is what's happening every subsequent year. We got a whole lot of red with these bubbles on them, but not a lot of blue. This tracks for the entire world. We are seeing the ocean warm. And if you overlay, which I need to find a way to overlay these data sets, if you overlay the global warming temperatures with specifically the ocean temperatures with the greenhouse gas emissions, the line is almost exact. So it's the correlation is really quite striking when you look at these together. We are also having an issue with precipitation in New Jersey. So if you look at the chart on the left, you'll see that there's a lot of wet. There's a lot of green, which indicates wet. Probably should be blue for wet, but I'll talk to Rutgers about that. And that's followed by a whole lot of red, which is dry. We are currently in a meteorological drought watch. We had about a 10-month drought warning, which is a higher escalation level on the drought chart that ended just over the late summer, and we're back in it again. So this tells us, and it's not just these 2 years, because this pattern repeats over time for New Jersey, that we simply have too much water in New Jersey, except for when we don't have enough of it. And that's the polarity of the impact of climate change. And I sit on the State Water Supply Advisory Council, and one of my jobs there is to help advise the DEP on managing our water supply so that your kitchen faucet and your toilet don't run dry, so that we are managing enough water. So right now we are asking people to conserve water because we're a little concerned that we don't have quite as much as we should have at this time of year. This should be a very rainy time of year. And we did get some rain a few days ago, maybe a week ago, but we're not really where we should be in terms of the robustness of supply at this point. So we have too much water, except for when we don't have enough. And we're getting too much water, and we're getting bigger storms because it's hot. So warmer air holds more water. And then we get these big dumps of storms. You get 5 inches, 6 inches, 9 inches of rain in an hour, 2 hours, and completely floods out a community. Also, drought exasperates flood because soil cannot absorb the rain when it's coming down from the sky. It's seized up, it's dry. You need a slow, steady rain to kind of loosen that soil up, which then would allow it to receive the rain. So these regulations are these NJPACT REAL, New Jersey Protecting Against Climate Threat, Resilient Environment and Landscape regulations are in response to Governor Murphy's commitment to make New Jersey more resilient to the impacts of climate change. Governor Murphy has seen the impacts. We have seen people die because of the increased storms and the flash flooding that we're having. And he made a commitment with his Executive Order 100 in January of 2020 to adopt New Jersey regulations that make us more resilient to climate change. The original timeline for this was to propose those regulations within 1 year. We're a little off schedule. Part of that is because we had a global pandemic that required a lot of people's attention. That was not their regular job. So we are a little behind. We are also a little behind because the development industry has, quite frankly, kicked up a stink and told a whole lot of lies about these regulations that are just plain not true. I am completely open to conversation. I'm not going to pretend that 1,000 pages of regulations and 15 years worth of research have given us the perfect set of regulations. Every time you adopt a massive new policy, if it's Medicaid, Medicare, Social Security, American Resource Recovery Act, Obamacare, any of these, you should be open to going back and making tweaks and making the program even more effective. Yes, absolutely. But there have been wholesale outright lies told about these regulations. So I'm hoping to do a little bit of myth busting tonight with these. We are also anticipating that these regulations will be adopted under the Murphy administration, and we are being loud and advocating, because we can do that as a 501c3 at every opportunity we possibly can, to say that this is the right thing to do for New Jersey, because I am telling you, I believe with my whole chest that this is going to save lives and protect people. So there has been, one of the rumors is that, oh, there's no science on this. And how do we know what's going to happen until it happens? Well, by then it's too late. So we have never, the scientific community has never overestimated the impacts of climate change. Again, we have known about this relationship of greenhouse gas emissions and increasing temperatures and impact on the environment since about the 1950s. There's some indication in some literature, whose name I should remember. It's a female scientist back in, I believe, the 1940s that predates the 1950s work. But of course, she doesn't get a lot of credit and it's hard to find it. But we've known about this relationship for a long time and it's gotten clearer over time. So we're pretty confident about what is happening here. I will tell you that these regulations were reintroduced this July. So you'll see that in the timeline here. I'm giving you a little bit of an insider track here. At the request of the developer community and against my wishes. And, you know, I don't have any real power other than influence. So I was not happy with that. And I'll tell you a little bit more why later. One of the things that happened here is that, let me see if I can find it. Here we go. The original set of regulations said that we were expecting to see 5.1 feet of sea level rise by the year 2100. And so this is a probability analysis, and there is an 87% chance that we would see at least 5.1 feet by the year 2100. The revised science says that we will see an 87% chance of at least 4.4 feet. So there's a change of a couple inches there between the 5.1 and the 4.4. That's because the international, I should have spelled this out for you, but the IPCC, the International Panel on Climate Change. So that's a division of the UN that really identifies how do we assess global impact of climate change. They shifted the way they did their analysis, and they shifted away from using actual greenhouse gas emission numbers and temperature numbers to doing a policy analysis. And they did a policy analysis under the Biden administration based on the US's goals of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and creating more resilient communities. All of those policies have been reversed. So I do expect that when we go back and look at the science again in a few years, we're going to be back to something like 5.1 or greater of sea level rise. So what does that mean? Let me show you this map here. This is what 5.1 feet. I don't have a 4.4 foot, but imagine it looks very similar to this.
Jennifer, Jennifer.
Yeah.
Michael says, is that Rachel Carson that you were talking about?
No, it was not Rachel Carson. Rachel
right?
Carson was in the 60s and 70s. Yes. I'm going to have to find the name of that. Maybe when I come off screen, I can do a little Googling, or you guys could do it for me. Yeah, there was a woman scientist in the 1940s that predated the published literature on climate change. And we didn't call it climate change in the 1950s. It was like global temperature increase.
Mm-hmm.
And I cannot remember her name, and I'm a little ashamed of myself right now. But I will make that my own personal homework tonight to go and find that out, because she deserves to have her name known.
Yep.
But that's a good question. Thank you for letting me know about that. So what we're seeing now for the 5.1, this is 5.1 feet, 4.4 feet is going to look somewhat very similar to this, is we're seeing an encroachment into New Jersey's coastline. This is just sea level rise is what we're talking about here. This is incredible information for us to have so that we can plan moving forward. We can build more resilient communities. This isn't going to happen overnight. We have to start now in 2025 if we hope to get there in the next 75 years of building more resilient communities. My position is that anything we build today, we should have a reasonable expectation that it's going to be around in 30, 40, 50, 75 years, especially if we're talking about roads, hospitals, police stations, even homes should be around for that long. You should be able to build something that is resilient to the impacts that we know are coming. And so that's what we are saying now. This has no impact if you already have a home in this area. When these regulations go into effect, you don't have to automatically raise your home. But when you are redeveloping, or if your home is more than 50% damaged by a storm and you're going to rebuild, or your store, then you have to come into compliance with the new regulations. And so what are the new regulations? One of the simplest things you can do is you got to go up. You have to go up. You have to allow for the waters, for the increasing sea level rise to pass underneath. And most of the homes, I shouldn't say most, many of the homes, because I don't have the data to say most, many of the homes that rebuilt after Superstorm Sandy have already built in accordance with these regulations. So they already have that elevation. And if you drive around the shore or the coast, you can see this. And so many of these homes, some of them you'll see on stilts, some of them you'll see there's a siding that wraps the stilts, and they have garages on the first floor. So you can have a garage on the first floor. You can put your car down there. That's fine. You can put storage down there. Under these regulations, you are not allowed to have a bedroom, and you're not allowed to have living space on that first floor, because we don't want people to get trapped. I also want to say a note about the 4.4 feet that we're expecting by the year 2100. So two things, if I can remember them both. One of them being that it isn't that we get to the year 2100 and all of a sudden the 4.4 feet comes in. It comes in gradually over time, right? So 30 years from now, it'll be worse than today. 50 years from now, it'll be worse than 30 years from now. And so the idea is that it gradually increases over time. So when we are rebuilding, we want to rebuild to the standard of the year 2100. And that's because we're most confident about the science to the year 2100. After 2100, it gets a little fuzzy because the science isn't clear, because we haven't quite made those decisions yet from a policy perspective. We are basing this analysis. So pretend this 5.1 says 4.4, because that's what it actually is in these regulations. We're basing this analysis on what we call moderate emissions scenario. And so this means that we actually will have a reduction in greenhouse gas emissions below what those emissions are today. It means that we are in accordance with the Paris Climate Agreement. And I'm here to tell you, if you don't already know, and I'm sure most of you do, because you're very bright students at Stevens, we are not on track for the Paris Climate Agreement. We are not. And so that's why I think this is going to be worse than we are predicting today, unless, I sound like the Lorax here, but unless we do something about it. Unless we get back on track. And with the United States trading places with China, depending on what greenhouse gas you're looking at and what year you're looking at, as really a global leader in emissions, it is incumbent upon us to take a leadership role. And we're not doing that right now. So we're in a bit of trouble. We're going to see the minimum of 4.4 feet. The other thing I wanted to say is I'm talking to you today about your regular old garden variety sea level rise. This is where the water is going to be by the year 2100. When we look at this map here, this is not storm surge. When you have a hurricane, Irene, Isis, Henri, a superstorm Sandy, you are going to see 14, 21, 25 foot of storm surge. That is a horse of a different color. That is an evacuate the area. Things are going to get real bad. What this is talking about is where sea level rise will be. So the ocean is coming in and you're not going to be able to stop it for the whole coast. There are some projects that we have underway to protect New York City, to protect Hoboken, and these are multi-billion-dollar projects. They will not be constructed for the entire coastline and the entire bayshore. So we've got to do better. One of the other things you can do is you can put fill in. And again, I'm showing you a 30,000 foot level here. I'm not getting into all the details of 1,000 pages because one, I don't know that I can do. We don't have the time. So you could put some fill in to raise yourself up above where the climate adjusted flood elevation. So that's the 4.4 feet is going to be by the year 2100. So there are a couple different options. There are other engineering options. If you are wrapping your stilts and putting your cars down there, we're also going to require you to have what's called wet proofing for flooding. And so you've got breakaway walls. There's also a dry flooding technique that you can do. I don't believe that's allowed in this. So that's the climate adjusted flood elevation portion of the rule. There's 4 portions of these rules. That's the biggest one, and that's the most controversial because it is going to require some additional materials when building. So it's going to require some additional expense. I'm going to get into more of the economic impacts of not taking action in a moment. So it will increase the cost a bit for going up. Okay, the next thing, if you'll excuse me for 1 second here. The second element of these rules is stormwater management. So in New Jersey, I think I already said, we are one of the 13 original colonies. We've got a lot of old development. We are more than 350 years old. We still have, well, I don't know if we still have, because we've done a good job in the last 15 years or so of getting rid of wooden drinking water lines. So pre-revolutionary wooden drinking water lines. I helped write some grants for those. We've got a lot of old development. The first time we adopted comprehensive stormwater management was in 2004. So think about all the development that happened pre-2004 and the engineering methodology for development pre-2004 was to get the rainwater away. So the rainwater and the snow melt, get it off my property, move it away. The problem is we ran out of a way. We're the most densely populated state in the nation. And so away meant somebody else's basement. It means somebody's business. It means flooding a road. There's no more away left in New Jersey. And what we did with those 2004 stormwater regulations was that we required both water quantity and water quality treatment. So we cared about what you were doing with the volume of water, as well as the quality of the water as it leaves your site. So we didn't want it running over lots of chemicals or contaminated sites or big giant salt piles that you may have stored for the winter and then moving into our freshwater stream. So we cared about how much and we cared about the quality of it. What we didn't include in 2004 when we adopted these regulations, which were required by the Clean Water Act. So all 50 states have these regulations. They're not all the same. New Jersey's tends to be a little bit better, even though we like to complain about them. Is what we didn't include were calculations to require stormwater management for redevelopment projects. And so this was a loophole or a failure in the regulations. Because when we do, this is almost another seminar, but I'll go through a little adventure line here with you. When we do stormwater calculations, if you are calculating on, say you're cutting down you're developing on a farm that has good infiltration, so you've got good drainage, your pre and post development calculations have to match. So you have to find a way to infiltrate the same amount of water that was infiltrating on that farm as you would once you have your development in place. So that's when we have all these green infrastructure techniques, stormwater basins, et cetera, et cetera. If you are redeveloping, and say you're redeveloping a big mall with a large sprawling parking lot, your pre-development infiltration calculation is 0 because water doesn't flow through blacktop unless it's cracked or broken, but water doesn't flow through blacktop. So you have to recharge 0 amount, you have to infiltrate. And that's a quantity issue of how you're managing the volume of stormwater. The issue with that is we're never going to be able to fix our flooding problems unless we look at the old development, because we're one of the 13 original colonies and we got a lot of old development. So we have to deal with this as a problem. So for the first time ever, part of these NJPACT rules will have regulations on how to manage stormwater for redevelopment. It's a little different than if you're developing on a farm field, but it is going to start to tackle the problem. Again, any big policy change should be reevaluated over time and should be adjusted, and it should be fixed so that it works better for the people and for the people who have to implement the policy. So this is a revision on that 2004 regulation, and I'm thrilled about it. I've been asking for it since 2004, and I couldn't be happier that this is included in this regulation. So this will apply to the entire state of New Jersey, not just the coastal area. So the sea level rise part only applies to the parts of the state that are affected by sea level rise. This applies to the entire state of New Jersey. The next thing that is in these regulations, so I told you they got 4 parts, right? So 1 is the sea level rise, 2 is the stormwater management for redevelopment, 3 is nature-based solutions. So nature-based solutions, think green infrastructure, think wetlands restoration, think erosion issues on the coastline, creating ecological habitat, rescuing our wetlands, our coastal wetlands in particular has become a real challenge for groups who are doing coastal restoration work because the wetlands are drowning. Wetlands need oxygenation as well. And the more that they are inundated by consistent water, they're not getting that oxygenation. So there are lots of soil deposition projects. So how do we increase the elevation of our wetlands so that they can be more resilient to the sea level rise that's creeping in? Well, you can't just go dump 2 feet of soil on them. You'll drown them. It's too much. So some groups are having really good results with doing spray deposition of clean soil, adding a couple inches at a time. So then the plants can grow up through that soil and you're actually raising the elevation of the wetlands. Why are wetlands important? Because they work as both our kidneys and our bladders for our nature system. They filter pollutants and they hold water back. So they help prevent flooding, they help clean water. They also provide amazing habitat for both indigenous species who are here in New Jersey and migratory species who pass through. We are on the Atlantic Flyway for a whole variety of songbirds that come from South America and go all the way up through the top of New Jersey. We're at the northernmost range for them. And we're also the southernmost range for a whole series of Arctic birds that come down. So we're a really special place. So for the first time ever, we have a permitting solution in these NJPACT real rules for organizations who do restoration work. Our whole permitting system in New Jersey, and really most states and the federal government, is really keyed up to, you want to do a development and you're impacting nature in some way. So you're having a harmful impact and you get a permit that allows you to do that harm. And so there are some repercussions for it, but you're allowed to do that harm. You're allowed to fill a certain amount of wetlands. You're allowed to go into a coastal area. So that's the whole permitting system. There's no permitting system for a nature-based organization who wants to go in and just do a wetlands restoration. The question is always, well, what are you building? What are you harming? Well, nothing. I'm just trying to fix some stuff. And so it's been a real bugger for 30-something years for us to try to get through the permitting process at DEP so that we can do these restoration projects. So this kind of clears that red tape away and gives us a procedure to go through so that we can get our permits rather than having to constantly explain to new staff what we're trying to do. So there was no system for my colleagues who really do this work day in and day out. And so this is great. Those are the three big ones I want to get to. I'll give you a little summary at the end. I just want to do, if you excuse me for 1 second here, I want to do a little bit of talking about what I'm unhappy with in these rules. And this is, I mentioned these rules were reproposed in July. And the one big change in these rules was at the behest of developers, saying that if you require us to do this, the elevation with the sea level rise, then we're not going to be able to build affordable housing, which I think is just, I think it's a red herring argument. They were trying to fight against these rules, but they were successful here, and I think it's morally abhorrent. So now there is a provision in these NJPACT real regulations that say any project that includes affordable housing is eligible for a compelling public good hardship waiver. There are some conditions on that waiver, what you have to do to get it, and what you have to do if you get it. But any project that includes any number of affordable housing units now is eligible to apply for a hardship waiver. And I believe this policies are judgments, right? There's very rarely a right and a wrong in a policy. I think this is a wrong, because I believe that no matter how much money is in your paycheck at the end of the week, you deserve to live in a safe place. And I don't think, and there's a lot of other people that agree with me, I don't think the amount on your paycheck should require you to live in a dangerous, vulnerable place. And so what this potentially does is allows for us to construct, as a whole in New Jersey, allows for us to put people who are the most vulnerable, who have the least amount of means to recover from a flooding event, in the most dangerous places. And I think for an administration that passed the nation's first environmental justice law, I think this is incongruent with their thinking, and I am opposed to it. And I have asked the DEP for more policies on this so that we can at least get the affordable housing segment of a project that is eligible for this waiver out of the floodplain and keep those people in places where they will be safer and more resilient. So I'm going to keep pushing on this. I am unhappy with this particular provision. And we have been very clear about why we're unhappy with this particular provision. I'm going to skip through this. This is just more of dispelling the myth. This is one of the things that I use to talk about the data and statistics. So there are people out there who know better that continue to just spread misinformation and disinformation, really, saying that there's low confidence in the data and not really understanding what confidence means in terms of statistics. There's not a lot of data out there about what will happen for New Jersey in the year 2100 because of the impacts of climate change, but we feel very good about the data that does exist. So you get a low confidence because there's not a large volume of data out there, but the data that is out there we feel is very accurate. So they're trying to do a statistical manipulation. This is just more about affordable housing, and folks are saying that this is building no build zones. That's not true. We're not saying no build, we're saying you got to go up. And so these are some pictures of homes that have already gone up because they experience flooding from our ocean on a regular basis. So they know that you've got to go up. You could have storage under there. You could have your kayak, you could have your canoe, you could have some decorations, you could have your car under there, but you can't have a bedroom. You can't have somebody who is going to experience flooding and potentially be trapped and lose their lives. So we are, this is again, more on affordable housing. I talk a lot about this in different realms, and I just want to be clear that we are 100% in support of affordable housing. We believe that people deserve the dignity of living in the communities where they work. we believe that they deserve to live in safe homes. So we should not be altering and allowing people to live at grade in areas where we know it's going to flood. So let me talk, I'm coming towards the end of this, and then we can open it up to some Q&A, and I hope you do have some, because I'd love to have a conversation about this. I just want to talk about the impacts of this. This is some information I pulled from the National Center of Environmental Information, and I found that it resonates pretty well, particularly with the flood insurance industry and with elected officials who represent places that have recently been flooded. And by recent, I mean within the last 10 years, because they see the impacts. There's complaint from the developer community that this will cost more. Yes, you're going to have to buy some more steel. You're going to have to buy some more rebar. You might have to do some fill. But the real issue is that every 32 weeks on average, from 1980 to 2024, every 32 weeks, we experience a climate or weather related event in New Jersey that causes more than $1 billion in damage. So obviously, these don't come exactly every 32 weeks, but when you average the number of storms, so the 72 confirmed weather or climate storms that have happened since 1980 to 2024, the economic impact is enormous. I'm not even talking about the lives lost, which have altered families forever. We know this is happening. We know it's going to get worse. So this allows us to prepare. It allows insurance industries to take something that feels unpredictable to them right now. So they feel like we get a big storm, they have to do a big payout, and then they have to raise the rates. We get a big storm, they have to do a big payout, then they have to raise the rates. This provides some predictability into the system of knowing what is going to happen moving forward. We feel very good about this data. And again, science has never overestimated the impacts of climate change. And my fear is that, if anything, we are underestimating it because of the direction that the United States is heading in right now. So with that said, so these are the four pillars. Sorry, I don't have a slide on the improved permitting process, but there is an improved permitting process here because there is an electronic submittal of permits and notification of permits that did not exist. Again, we're adapting old systems. If we could create new systems today, we would probably do things a little bit differently, but we are adapting based on a DEP that started in 1970. So when you're adapting systems, they get a little wonky. So this is an upgrade and a streamlined permitting process. So again, there's the sea level rise portion of these regulations, the stormwater for redevelopment, the nature-based solutions permitting process, and there are some additional protections for wetlands and restoration in here as well. 1,000 pages of regulations, 15 years worth of science. This is the best I can give you right now. With that said, I want to thank you all and encourage you to connect with your local watershed groups and encourage you to connect with your local nonprofits. ANJEC is statewide. Feel free to check out our resources. We sort of have like an NPR style model. We ask people to support us. We rely on membership dollars, individual contributions, foundations, corporate sponsors with like-minded missions, but we make our resources available to everybody. So particularly you as students, I would check out what we're sharing on social media, check out our webpage. If there's more about something I said tonight, whether it was the NJPACT rules or something adjacent to that you're interested in, you can go ahead and email us. And again, as Dr. Schaefer said, vote, vote, vote. If you have a vote by mail ballot, you've got to get that postmarked, or it's too late now. You've got to get it postmarked by 8 p.m., but I believe the post office is closed, so you'd have to find a drop box to put it in before 8 p.m. If you need to find out where a drop box is, you can go to vote.nj.gov. The other way to vote in New Jersey is early in-person voting. So if you did that, good on you. We had 8 or 9 days of that. So excellent. And the polls are open until 8 p.m. tonight. So you have a little bit of time after this tonight, if you didn't vote, to go hurry up and make that happen. If you are in line by 8 p.m., you have the right to vote. They cannot kick you out of line. There were a couple issues with voting earlier today, so there might be some places that are open a little later, but I can't confirm that right now. But if you are in line by 8 p.m., you have the right to vote. If you or anybody you know has got a question about where to go to vote, vote.nj.gov. You can help them out, help them find their local polling location. This is me, Jay Coffey at ANJEC.org, if you want to find me. And if you've got a question later on, info@anjec.org, that email is monitored by 4 or 5 different staff members, and they take the request and get them to the right staff person. We've only got 12 people. I promise you that info@anjec.org will get a faster response than the 40,000 or so unread emails that I have. I'm not even kidding. So yeah, feel free to, you could try emailing me at jcoffey@anjec.org, or I promise you info@anjec.org. And then sometimes my staff will send something right to me and say, hey, Jen, you said people could email you. And I say, oh yes, I did. And so I will get it from them. So thank you for the opportunity to be here tonight.